Balrog reached the bridge, Gandalf stood in the middle of the span, leaning on his staff in his left hand, but in the other hand Galadriel gleamed, cold and white. His enemy halted again, facing him, and the shadow about it reached out like two vast wings. It raised the whip, and the thongs whined and cracked. Fire came from its nostrils, but Gandalf stood firm. "You cannot pass," he said. The orc stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." The Balrog made no answer. The fire in it seemed to die, but the darkness grew. It stepped forward slowly on the bridge, and suddenly it drew itself up to a great height, and its wings were spread from wall to wall. But still Gandalf could be seen, glimmering in the gloom. He seemed small and altogether alone, gray and bent like a wizened tree before the onset of a storm. From out the shadow a red sword leapt flaming. Galadriel glittered white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and his sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bow, the Balrog leapt full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. At that moment, Gandalf lifted his staff, and crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flames sprung up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, with the rest remaining poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, it swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled around the wizard's feet, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone, and slid to the abyss. "Fly, you fools!" he cried, and was gone. Many fans of fantasy, or movies in general, are familiar with the masterpiece that is The Lord of the Rings. Be it the literary milestone from the mind of J.R.R. Tolkien, or the cinematic adaptations by Ralph Bakshi or Peter Jackson, audiences for nearly 3/4 of a century have been witness to many scenes from the Battle of Helm's Deep, the charge of the Rohirrim, and the fateful clans on the slopes of Mount Doom that have left their marks on their minds forever. But there is one scene that, while many people know it well, few underestimate the depths in which it goes in the lore of Middle-earth. This scene is no other than the fight between Gandalf and the Balrog of Khazad-Dum. For many, the setup is simple enough. A wizard faces off against a huge monster, defeats the beast at the price of his own life, and allows the forces of good to trundle on. But Tolkien, being the lore enthusiast that he was, would not leave it at that. According to the Silmarillion and its online synopsis, Go Tolkien Gateway, we learn that Gandalf and the Balrog are actually members of the same race of beings known as Maiar, servants of the gods of Middle-earth known as the Valar, who were present since the very beginning of the world. The thing which differentiates the two is the path they would choose, the Balrog falling to the corruption of the first Dark Lord Morgoth, thus changing its form and nature into the fiery abomination we see, whilst Gandalf remained loyal to his masters and would go on to fight against the corruption of Morgoth and his traitorous kin. From this, we can extract 3 meanings from this. For one, this battle could be a manifestation of Tolkien's Christian faith and his belief that good always triumphs over evil, even in the darkest of times, with Gandalf's sacrifice being an analogy for Christ's sacrifice for the good of the world. The second could be a retelling of the interconnected themes seen in many Norse sagas, of which Tolkien was a fan, where ancient grudges from the past would catch up with our heroes and force them to duke it out one last time. Or, possibly, this is all just an excuse for Tolkien to build up tension in his story, something which he had always been mindful of upholding throughout his story, as many of his later writings would show. But that, I suppose, is entirely up to you. Thank you for your time.